Hi, my name is Joseph, and I'm here with Isaac and Carter for Contender Bicycles, and today we're going to be talking about the Orbea Oiz, the Santa Cruz Blur, and the Scott Spark RC, and what we all thought of them when we had the chance to ride them down in St. George. I think I'll let Isaac start off the discussion with his opinions on the Orbea Oiz.
I think the Orbea Oiz would be my go-to bike if I wanted to do like super serious racing. It was really, really stiff. It was an aggressive cockpit setup. Like you felt like you were stretched out. You felt like you had a lot of weight over the front wheel. It wouldn't be my choice for like fun every single day, but it was by far the raciest bike I gotta try. I think in terms of like a modern XCO course, it'd be the most capable.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but also since we were both on the same size bike, we both ride a medium, and I'm pretty like 3 inches shorter than Isaac is. I felt really comfortable on the Oiz, and like definitely with the positioning Isaac was in, he wouldn't sustain him over a long day, but where I felt, I would love that bike on like a long marathon type stuff. Probably wouldn't do it if I would not buy it if I'd never had the idea to race in mind. Like I'd want to race on that bike. I wouldn't want that just to be like my everyday trail bruiser. But if I was racing and wanted to do like really long rides, I really like the Orbea Oiz. It was confident. There's like the one time is because its stiffness, it does chatter at high speeds. Like the rear shock will not track very well. But honestly, I found that as sort of like a necessary drawback of the bike to like provide the stiffness that you want when you climb and just like responsiveness in all like the corners and like rock gardens and technical sections. So I felt like it was a pretty good give and take that Orbea decided to go with making it a little bit stiffer.
Yeah, though I also think the way the rear shock chatters and how stiff it is, I wouldn't like, you can definitely race marathon on it, but if I'm taking like a casual fun like long adventure day, I feel like how stiff that bike is would beat you up a little bit. It would make an excellent like marathon race bike. It's super efficient, super fast, but like really, really long like fun days where you just want to like have fun, you're not trying to be super fast, it'd feel a little bit aggressive, kind of bouncing you around a little bit.
Yeah.
You could also run like lower tire pressure, things like that to kind of counteract it.
Wide tires, like it does have support for wider tires, so yeah. You can throw some like even like Cush core type beat things in them.
Exactly.
And have a really fun, comfortable bike. If that's, but like that's how I would set it up. I'm not really the factory standard, but I do know a thing or two.
Yeah.
What do you think, Carter?
I'd pretty much agree with all that. I'm not a huge XC guy myself, so my opinion might not be the most valuable, but it did seem the most racy bike, and if I were to ride more XC, I probably wouldn't go with that one. I'd go for a more all-rounder like the Blur, like we'll talk about soon.
Yeah. I did like, however, it was a perfect balance between the Blur and the Spark in terms of like serviceability, but also integration, because it had internal cabling, but it also used oversized bearings, which would make it easier to service in the future. So it kind of sits in between the Spark and the Blur in that standpoint, where it's not so proprietary and make it like insanely hard to work on, but it's not so like simple that it looks old-fashioned.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
And we should also mention the lockout it has.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the squid lock.
I like the squid lock personally more than the twin lock. It just feels a little bit more refined. The twin lock's a bit clunky in my opinion, but like the squid lock I've had a lot of experience with. It feels super smooth a lot of the time, and it's responsive, it's fast.
It reminds me a lot more of the old twin lock on the Sparks. I actually prefer the old twin lock on the Sparks, not the new one, just for how they felt. They didn't feel as light action, I guess is why the new twin locks are the way they are. But I kind of like the heavy action of the old ones because it was reassuring, you know what position you're in.
You get like the satisfying like
yeah, that little like click when you push it in. I think the only thing about the squid lock I don't like is the fact that it's push to open. I've always been a push to close kind of guy. And if you've ever like gone into like a crash in a race or whatever, and like let's say like one of your cables snapped, got caught on a branch or something, and if your cable snapped, then your shock's stuck in the lockout position.
Yeah.
If I had an issue, I'd rather be stuck in open and be more comfortable than be stuck locked out and have to go descend on a fully locked out bike.
And then also risk messing up your suspension for the long haul.
Yeah, that too.
I also don't love where the dropper lever is on the squid lock. I like the lockout mechanism. The dropper lever is one of those like over the bar ones, and it's really hard to find a good dropper like integration with the 2-position lockouts, having a shifter, having all your brakes. Like bars just get cluttered. That's the fact of the matter. But I don't love where it is. I kind of prefer the Scott over that one where it's below. But then again, like I did mess up because I wasn't used to it. And on the Scott, I hit the dropper when I was trying to lock out the bike, and yeah.
I really don't like either. I think getting like a dropper lever like integrated into a bike or in a place where it feels good and being able to have like an accessible lockout is a hard thing to do, and it never feels quite right. I think it's like either you have a dropper lever that's really far down, you have to stretch your thumb really far this way, or it's laying on top of the bar and you have to push it down and it kind of makes you move your wrist up and it feels awkward. I've always been kind of like the opinion of use a separate dropper lever, tuck it more underneath the bar and then move the twin lock a little bit farther inboard. I know a lot of people don't like that, but that's what I've done for any bikes I've owned with a double lockout and dropper push situation. But it's just kind of a hard thing to do. There's a lot of things on the bar to be able to fit in there.
Yeah, I did that with the wolf tooth bar centric one, and so I could rotate it. And that's when I had just a separate twin lock and dropper lever, but that one worked really well for me because I could like put it in the right place. But should we talk maybe about the Santa Cruz Blur? I know Carter brought it up.
Yeah,
but
Blur didn't have a lockout, so it didn't have that issue.
Yeah.
Or TR at least.
I did like the Blur a lot. The Blur felt really confident. Like, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I was really surprised with how well the Blur like handled itself in the rock gardens. I've never really been on a short travel bike quite like it. Like it was kind of almost like a point and shoot bike, which you don't really like feel on a 120 bike. Like you get accustomed to point and shoot when you're riding 160, 170 enduro bikes. Like I've been on 150 trail bikes where the line choice is the most important thing, but on this Blur, it was just straight down the trails, no problems, no questions asked. I know Carter really liked that bike. You want to give us your take?
I did really like it. Coming from riding more enduro type stuff, that felt the most at home for me on an XC bike. It did everything they said, and then also I just enjoy Santa Cruz's design. You know, it's very simple. There's nothing to it. It's just nice. I like it.
Lifetime bearing support is really nice of them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think the Blur was pretty much everything the Orbea had in the Descent, but not being held back by the rear shock not tracking super well on the Orbea at high speeds.
Yeah.
The Blur had a softer rear end, so at high speeds, once you kind of got rowdy, you could keep it kind of staying rowdy because it didn't hold itself back because it maintained traction. At the same time, the downside of that is it didn't climb as well as the Oiz did. Like if you felt like if you're trying to like sprint up like a fire road or something, you're trying to put out some power, there was more noticeable pedal bob, and it wasn't as stiff in the rear end. You didn't notice your power output as much. But as like being like number one, the higher bottom bracket made it feel super playful too. So like techie line choice was really fun, and it could take a beating. You could kind of throw down with it, and it would take it, which was really awesome.
Yeah, but the Blur is definitely the bike for like those looking to never race but want like the short travel responsiveness and like fun bike. Like I would, if I were to buy a race bike out of these three, like the Blur unfortunately would probably be my third choice. But if I were to buy just a bike to take out every day and thrash and like have a good time on and just know that it's gonna like keep on keeping on, I would buy the Blur hands down.
Yeah. I think yes, but honestly, if I were to choose a race bike, I am choosing the Blur, but also I race very differently than you do.
Yeah, slowly.
Ouch, number one. Number two, you've always raced more XCO style stuff, which is shorter and way more fast paced, and I prefer much longer like marathon endurance style races. And on a much longer endurance style race, I want a bike that's gonna stay capable in a descent when I'm really tired and fatigued. Because when you get tired and fatigued, 6 hours into a race and you go into a gnarly descent, and then maybe a stiff feeling bike with a kind of chattery rear end might get you thrown an OTB, might get you somewhere, and honestly just kind of beats you up. Having this little bit softer feeling Blur might keep you feeling comfortable like that for longer. May not necessarily be faster, but I think just honestly comfortability wise, I prefer it.
Yeah.
And on like steep, bumpy climbs, like that keep you more comfortable too, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I also like the fact that it's got 3 water bottle cages.
That is nice.
If you want to take like a really long adventure day, like not even just a race, but you're just going out with a Garmin, 3 bottles and some food, and you just want to explore, that's a great way to do it, because that one extra bottle could mean the difference between like another hour or 2 of riding or needing to call for a ride home.
Yeah. Get that. Does anyone have any negatives on the Blur? Like, one thing that you wish Santa Cruz would have done differently?
I wish it was easier to get a lockout on the trail version of it.
Yeah.
I think having a 120 mil trail, like I guess downcountry style bike, so-called agro XC, whatever you want to call it, like the Blur TR, is that while I get that their cross-country version does have a lockout and they didn't want their downcountry version to have a lockout, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but I think downcountry bikes themselves should still have the option to be able to be spec'd with a remote lockout, because endurance, like marathon athletes and racers tend to like to choose the more downcountry style options and then put aggressive cockpits on them for really long race days just for comfortability reasons.
Yeah.
But then trying to do that and not having the option to get a lockout on it isn't the best.
Yeah, and then it's a hassle to get a lockout because you have to
Yeah.
order the right suspension in, and it becomes way more difficult than it needs to be.
Not just that, but the Sid Lux rear shock that fits that bike was in 190 by 45. Those aren't even made anymore with a remote lockout, so you can't even get like shocks for it with a lockout. So then you're like really low on options too. So it's kind of a weird thing there.
Yeah. Well, do we want to talk about the Spark now? The last bike we've yet to talk about.
Yeah.
I'll start. The bike was really fun. I'll give it that. It was a super playful bike. Definitely, I really want to take it down like a jump line, honestly. I think it would be really fun on a jump trail. That being said, it was so short. Like, it felt like my back was completely vertical. The reach was really short, and that sort of made it like squirrely at like even like low speeds when I was climbing. Like, I would be, and it's like any shoulder sway that you get, just like when you're being fatigued, it felt immediately transferred into the cockpit, and it was just sort of all over the place.
Yeah.
But then like it was super playful, super maneuverable. Like on the downhill, I felt confident. I felt good. Like, that was a fun bike to ride. It was just way too short for like my setup personally.
Yeah. On that bike, so the one we test rode in St. George was the medium World's Cup XO1 build. I owned a medium XO1 build. I bought it in 2021, rode it in 2020. So I had one for a while. And the one I bought was a large, so it did fit me better. And the time I felt on that bike is even in the large size, I still felt a little cramped. And that bike, by the time I had finished owning it, it was slammed all the way. I had no spacers on it, and my saddle was pushed farther back. It was pretty much as aggressive as I could get, and it still felt a little short. I think that bike is definitely designed around their top racer, Nino Schurter, for the Scottsdale mountain bike team. It's like that bike's pretty much designed for him, nobody else, and he has this pretty big habit of running like insanely long stems and super negative degree bars. Like on the old Sparks, he would run like a 90 mil stem with a negative 25 degree stem. It was pretty insane. On the new ones, he runs a negative 40 by 100, which is crazy aggressive for a modern cross country bike. And I think that bike was designed with him as a racer, so that was in mind. So when you spec it with like a more normal bar stem combo setup, it feels short because it's designed around using that insanely aggressive cockpit setup that Nino runs.
But that like brings to the other question is like, why do we need an outdated bar stem combo? Like, now stems are getting shorter and shorter. Like 100 mil stem is longer than you see on a lot of gravel bikes, even in the same size.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's kind of a weird design choice to have a bike that if you want it to be comfortable, you need a really, really long stem, when that's really not what the standard is.
I think the bike is comfortable with the short stem. I just think it doesn't feel as aggressive. It's like it feels weirdly like if you've ridden like a tall boy or anything around those ranges, like that kind of like 130, 120 mil like travel, like just kind of light trail bike, it feels kind of positioned like that with the shorter stem and bar. Like you feel like you're sitting up pretty high.
Yeah, but like still on like a new race bike with was it 60 or 70 mil stem, dude?
60 on the medium,
60
70 on the
mil?
large.
Like, I don't want my knees to be almost touching the bars in a corner. Like, that's not something you want even at a stock stem length.
Yeah.
Like, I would only ever feel that when I put a 35 mil stem on my like big bike, but then it's like when you're riding a cross country bike with a 60 mil stem, and it feels
Yeah.
like you're about to knee your bars, and like could be a possibility in a race. It's just not the.
That's fair.
I never loved that design.
Yeah. I do, however, I think the frame lines of that bike are really good. It's a good looking bike. It's got a big down tube and a really thin top tube, and it looks futuristic and it looks sleek. It's a cool bike to look at. Like, it's a good looking bike.
Want to jump in?
Yeah, I have two things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's shorter, I feel like it'd make it a little more playful if that's what you're into. Would you say that?
It is. It was a really playful bike.
Or even if, I don't know if it would come to this, but if you're on like a really tight track and you want to make some really tight corners, maybe it'd be better for that too. There's that, and then also as far as looks, I mean, it looks cool. The hidden shock is cool and all, but personally, I don't think I'd like to own that bike, just for maintenance reasons and that. But it's a cool idea and it looks good.
It's definitely the most futuristic looking bike, but it'd also be definitely the most time consuming to own if you were a home mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you were like a professional mechanic and you had all the tools at your access and you were like, or you bring it to a shop all the time, it's not that bad.
Yeah, that's the thing. You see like Danger Home and stuff, people like those claiming how easy to work on their bikes are, but then it's like, you've worked on bikes for the past 5 years. For like an everyday mechanic who's just been working on their bikes at home, who's not just amateur, it's not that easy to work on.
Yeah.
Like, to even do the dropper post, you have to take off the rear shock and like remove it and then run it up, and like that's a relatively easy thing that like a lot of people should be able to do in their basements. But now with like the twin lock, the dropper post and everything, like a dropper post install on that bike is an hour's worth of work.
It's easier than the old Spark, I will say that. The old Spark, trying to install a dropper on it, you usually had to pull the bottom bracket out to be able to get it. The new one, you don't have to pull the bottom bracket, and you can usually get it in about half the time of the old bike.
The old Spark caused me some tears trying to install a post on one. So.
The old Spark also though had an easier shock access, so it's like tomato tomato.
Yeah, but still with the twin lock, I don't want to mess anything up.
That's true. Yeah.
But okay, which one would each of you guys own, and for what reasons, and where would you want to, like, where would you ride it most? What would be your thing with it? What would you do to the bike to make it yours?
I think I'm going Blur TR, mainly because I like to work on all my own bikes at home, so being super easy to work on saves me some time, gets me on the trails faster. I think I would set it up a little bit differently. Those in a size large, my size, it comes to like a 60 mil stem and kind of wider bars. I would actually like to run that bike as if it was a race bike, but on that kind of playful platform. So maybe running like a 70, maybe even 80 millimeter stem. And like, so super long stem, and like I'd run it, no spacers, slammed, narrow bars. So kind of old fashioned style. No fun cockpit on a fun bike.
Get that. What about you, Carter?
I would also go with the Blur TR, and for maintenance reasons for one, and then also what I would do with it is, I don't race, so I would just take it on bigger rides without like the craziest techie descents or anything. Just like if I want to go out all day and get the miles, I'd take that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty much split in my mind between the Oiz and the Blur. I do like the Blur, but this is gonna sound weird. I want a more aggressive bike. I like the feeling of having a race bike. I like the stiffness. I like the performance. Just one of those weird things. Just like, I love when bikes feel like they really want to like push themselves, and like definitely climbing on the Oiz edged out the Blur, like out of the corners. It felt like it was rearing to go. The Blur didn't have a lockout, and it's not a bad climber. I wouldn't say it was as good as the Oiz.
I don't know.
And then I like to climb more than I like to descend, especially on like cross country bikes. So if I could have a bike that could just rocket me up to the top of the climbs and then be kind of hairy and sketchy on the way down, that's my style of riding. I love fistful of rear brake, just skidding stuff out. Not very comfortable, but if it'll get the job done. So
yeah, that's fair. I think I'm also pretty tied between the Oiz and the Blur, because they're very similar bikes, but I think I landed on the Blur mainly due to maintenance, as I said, and also 3 bottle cages. I'm a sucker for things like that. I like my 7-8 hour adventure days in the backlands, and having 3 bottle cages and it's pretty awesome. So
Yeah. Anyone got anything else? Anything they didn't get off their chest?
I would just say, I would rephrase what I just said about what I would do with it. I mean, you can obviously lay down the miles on all of these, but I would use this as like the down country bike, like big mountain rides and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I will say the Blur would be such a fun like Park City bike where you're riding up and down the resorts and then like doing some of like the big bike tracks on it. Like that would be a great mid-mountain to like quiver killer bike.
I think the Spark can actually do a pretty similar thing to that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the Spark, if you set up the Spark I think the Spark would also be an insane XCO race bike if you set up super aggressively with that longer stem and stuff you were talking about that they make. Because you can make that bike really, really aggressive, but it can also fit a 2.6 inch tire, which is huge. So you can make like this like Frankenstein of a bike with that. Because I don't think the Oiz or the Blur can fit a 2.6. While Scott markets,
they're both 2.4s.
Yeah, they're both 2.4s, and the Spark is marketed as comes with a 2.4, but it can fit a 2.6, which is So you can make like this Frankenstein of a bike that would be really capable and really fun.
Well, sweet. I think that wraps it up. If you guys have any more questions on any of these bikes, don't hesitate to give us a call. We have them in store at our Park City and Salt Lake locations, so come check them out. We're happy to help. Once again, my name is Joseph. This was Isaac and Carter, and we are Contender Bicycles.